Today is Monday, October 4th, 2016. We are on the record at 9:10 a.m. The witness, please raise your right hand this morning.
You do solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I swear.
Thank you.
Please state your full name for the record.
Christopher Eric Newman?
Is it Deputy Newman?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Newman, my name's John Phillips. I represent the estate of Gregory Hill and their personal representative. We're going to have some questions for you today. I'm sure you've gone over, to some extent, the kind of rules that apply to a deposition. Before I go through them, have you given a deposition before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Same type things apply. Try to answer aloud rather than with nonverbal cues, head nods, because we're dealing with the written record. Try to answer with yeses and nos rather than uh-huhs or uh-uhs. I'm sure you do that in your work generally. And you know, most significantly in normal conversation, we tend to use what I call shorthand. We cut each other off. We know we guess what each other's saying, and we can turn a normal conversation into about 2/3 of a conversation. Here, we need it to be, 4/3 of a conversation. We need to let each other take a breath before we answer or ask the next question. So it's also not an endurance test. If you need to take a break for any reason, just let us know. How long have you been employed here?
October 1st will be 3 years.
Okay. This past October 1st?
No, this coming up October 1st. Will be
Okay.
3 years. Yeah, it's October 4th.
It's October 4th, yeah.
So yes, I just hit 3 years.
2016.
Yes.
You started October 1st, 2013?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where did you work before then?
I started in 1999 with the City of Fort Pierce Police Department, and I worked from 1999 until 2009. And then from 2009 to 2013, I worked for the Florida Division of Alcoholic Beverages and Tobacco.
Based out of where?
I worked out of Fort Pierce, and then I also worked out of West Palm Beach.
Okay. Let me back you up even further, and my goal is to not, ask any personal questions. I don't want to get into all of that. But where are you from?
I'm a native Floridian.
Okay. What part of Florida?
I was born in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay. How long have you lived in St. Lucie County?
As far as I remember, I think we moved here when I was 17.
Okay. When did you first develop a idea that you enjoyed law enforcement or wanted to go into law enforcement?
When I was like 5.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Well, I always liked police and firefighters, and when I got older, I don't like getting burned, so I decided to become a police officer.
Fair enough. And what education did you pursue to achieve that goal?
I got my high school diploma, and I went to the police academy.
What year?
98.
Okay. And you would have started with Fort Pierce Police Department as your first law enforcement job?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I graduated the academy, I believe, in early 99, and I was hired like a month after I graduated by Fort Pierce.
Very good. What did you do for, I guess it was about 10 years. What roles did you have with Fort Pierce Police Department?
I was a road patrol officer for my first, I think, 20 months, and then I went to the Special Investigations Unit, which was like narcotics and gangs, and I did that for almost 8 years.
What was your role with the Narcotics and Gangs Unit?
I was a detective.
Okay. How many detectives did Fort Pierce Police have in Narcotics and Gangs Unit?
At the time I was in there was, I believe, 6 of us.
Tell me about Fort Pierce. What kind of town is Fort Pierce?
It's a lower income, high crime kind of town.
What about St. Lucie County?
Has good parts and bad parts like any other county.
Okay. How did you go from Fort Pierce Police Department to was it ATF? What was the
ABT?
ABT? Sorry, yes. How did you make that transition, or why did you make that transition?
I had some friends that I knew that worked there, and a position came up as an agent, so I went over there.
Okay. And same question: how did you transition, or why did you transition from there to St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office?
When I worked for the state, a lot of times you were shipped around the state. So sometimes you would have to drive and work in Panama City, or you'd have to work in Miami or West Palm Beach or Jacksonville, and I just didn't like to travel.
Okay. What is your current role with St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office?
I'm currently assigned to road patrol.
Okay. And when this incident occurred, what were you assigned?
Road patrol.
Okay. Have you had any promotions or demotions since this incident?
No.
What is road patrol as you know it to be in St. Lucie County, with St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office? What are your job duties?
Proactively patrol areas, look for enforcement infractions, and answer calls for service.
Okay.
Provide public assistance.
Do you have an assigned police car or squad car?
Yes, I do.
Are you able to take that home with you?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the same at the time of this incident?
No.
Well, how is it different?
I have a newer car now.
Okay. Were you allowed to take it home then?
Yes.
Okay, it's just a different car.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a partner that patrols with you?
We really don't have assigned partners, no.
Okay. Same as the time of this incident?
Yes, sir.
What was your familiarity with Officer Lopez at the time of this incident?
We just been assigned to the same squad, and he worked out west. I believe at the time he was assigned out west, and I don't remember where I was assigned.
Did you know him personally?
Not really, just passing and roll call.
Okay. Where are we today?
St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office.
How often are you here in this office?
Well, I try to make it a point never to come up to this area of the office. I usually stay over on the other side.
What's the distinction?
This is where all the captains and the administration is. I try to stay over away from all that.
Yeah, this usually means trouble, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. But you actually report to this building?
Yes, sir.
How often?
When I'm road patrol, if you're not an early unit, you have to be here every day. So, and I report here probably 4 times a week.
And then go out on patrol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you come back before you finish the day?
Yes.
Same procedures generally in January of 2014?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have any discipline reasons that you left Fort Pierce Police Department?
No.
Okay. There's the term that floats around occasionally called gypsy cop, where people leave because they're basically in trouble in one police force and go to a different police force. That wouldn't describe you.
No, sir.
Okay. Did you have any administrative sanctions or discipline while at Fort Pierce Police Department?
I knew I had one when I think it was like 2008 or 9, I don't remember, and it was for leaving my car running.
Okay.
On a scene, and I grieved that, and I believe that was removed.
Okay. What is your understanding of Fort Pierce's police department regarding removal of charged discipline?
I can't remember. I couldn't tell you without looking at their policy.
That's fine. Do you know if there was any other discipline that would have been on your record at Fort Pierce Police Department?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Same question about with the state employment. Did you have any discipline that you're on your employment record?
No, sir.
Okay. As we sit here today for just a few days over 3 years with St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, have you had any discipline?
No, sir.
Okay. Have you had any charges that were either found to be unfounded or exonerated?
At St. Lucie County?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. How was this incident investigated?
I couldn't answer. I wasn't part of it.
Okay. Who did you speak with? Well, we'll break that down when we go through the timeline. Are you aware if any other entity other than St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office interviewed you or investigated you related to the shooting of Mr. Hill on January 14, 2014?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Before arriving on the scene, I don't have that address. Do you recall the address?
1501 Avenue Q.
1501 Avenue Q. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, DC. Before arriving on the scene at 1501 Avenue Q that on the afternoon of January 14, 2014, had anything abnormal happened that day to you or?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know what time you reported that morning?
We had different shifts then. We were on rotating eight-hour shifts, and our shift started at 3 o'clock.
Okay. And this happened fairly shortly after 3 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
Was this your first call?
Pretty much.
Okay. You don't recall if there was a call before this?
I had stopped out with the Deputy Paul Pearson before that on Avenue Q. I think it was like the 3200 block or 2900 block, something like that. He was out with a suspect that he thought had a warrant.
Okay. How did that get dispatched or radioed to you?
I went in service and I heard Deputy Pearson asking for a unit with a fingerprint reader because the guy didn't have any ID. And I just responded that way as a backup.
Okay. And that was how far away from 1501 Avenue Q?
How many blocks that is from like the 3000 block,
Okay.
15 blocks.
Okay. Do you recall how long that took?
No, I don't.
Do you know what you did in between leaving that scene and arriving at the scene on 1501 Avenue Q?
Driving.
What is your recollection about getting this call initially?
My initial reaction was I was wondering why they gave us a call in the city.
Why is that?
Well, usually the city handles their own calls for service.
And help me understand, I mean, especially somebody that spent 10 years with Fort Pierce Police Department, the jurisdiction. Where kind of does one jurisdiction, where does the jurisdiction of Fort Pierce Police and St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office typically lay?
I'd have to look at an annex map because it changes so much.
Okay. At the time, who handled calls at 1501 Avenue Q? That
I
area?
believe that was in the city.
Okay. And what was the policy, as you were aware of St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office at handling those calls?
Well, we can respond anywhere if somebody requests a deputy or asks for a deputy. But I believe that we cover the schools, we provide for the schools, and I believe the caller was calling from the school across the way, which is why I think we got dispatched.
Do you know whether that was a 911 type call or a non-emergency number call or something different?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. All you know is you got it through dispatch.
I was dispatched.
Did your patrol car have any type of camera, dash cam, any recording devices in it?
No, sir.
Did St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office at the time provide any body cams, eye cams, any type of recording devices?
No, sir.
Do they now?
No, sir.
Do any officers that you're aware of in St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office camera themselves? Let me rephrase that. Do you know of any officers locally with the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office that have personal cameras that they use?
That's against policy.
I would suspect, but not everywhere. Okay. The next set of questions, I kind of want to get a personal understanding of your recollection of this, not the detailed recollection. Meaning, do the events of January 4, 2014, no, yeah, January 14, 2014, stand out in your mind?
Yes, sir.
Why?
It was pretty traumatic.
Okay. Have you, before this, had you had to shoot anybody for any reason?
No.
Okay. Since this, have you had to shoot anybody for any reason?
No.
On duty or off duty?
No.
Okay. So this is the only time you've shot somebody?
Yes.
Okay. And memory is kind of a funny thing. People remember the certain moments in their life because they're just kind of burned in. There's a cartoon, I can't even remember the name of it now, but it actually does a pretty good job about kind of showing how memory works, and certain things you almost can remember the smell of that day. Would you agree with that assessment? That certain things.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much do you remember about January 14, 2014?
Bits and pieces.
Okay. Where do you wear your radio?
On my left shoulder.
Okay. And you would have gotten a call from dispatch through that radio, or through your car?
I believe when I got that call, I was still outside of my car.
Okay. Were you? How do you recall? And again, if the answer is I don't know to any of these questions, that's fine. How do you recall that call coming in?
I just remember, as far as I remember, was getting a call for a signal 22, which is a noise disturbance in the area of FK Suite at 14th and Q.
Okay.
15th and Q.
Was there anything other than a signal 22 communicated? I know the sheriff has mentioned to some extent that obscene music.
Yes, that was the complaint, that the music was really loud and vulgar.
Okay.
And they were worried about the kids.
Okay. When the call comes through, do they relay it as signal 22, or did they give the detail?
They gave it as far as I remember, what I recall was that there was a signal 22 of vulgar music.
Okay. And what is your understanding, or what was your understanding at the time, either one, of the type of criminal violation that would be? Is that a felony?
No,
Is that a misdemeanor?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay. What is it?
Just a complaint.
Okay. And what did you do?
I responded to the call.
We obviously know now that two officers responded. Do you know how the other officer got the call, or how they came to respond?
Officer Lopez was out with Detective Pearson with me in the 3000 block of Avenue Q because I believe at the time Deputy Lopez had a fingerprint reader in his car, which is why he responded. And then when I got the call for Avenue Q for the loud music, Deputy Lopez, just since he was there with me, responded as a backup.
Okay. How was it determined who's primary and who's backup?
I couldn't tell you.
Is that something official with a call like this, or is it something that just kind of happens? Does leadership take over, or is that do you radio back? I'm taking this call. Do you recall how this one happened?
Usually, if you get a call that's in your zone, if you're assigned to a zone, then you're the primary, and whoever responds is a backup.
Okay. Was this Officer Lopez's zone?
No, it was not.
Okay. This was your zone?
I'm not sure if it was my zone. I know I could have been a North Float. Without seeing the schedule for the day, I don't know where I was typically assigned.
Okay. The prior call on Avenue Q, was that gentleman detained? Or
When I pulled up there, he was talking to the detective. They were standing on the sidewalk together.
Do you know if he was arrested?
No, he was not.
Okay. As we sit here today, do you know that gentleman's name?
No, I don't recall.
Do you know whether some of the questions I ask are really dumb? Do you know if he had any relationship or correlation with Gregory Hill or his family?
I could not tell you.
Okay. They call this discovery because sometimes we got to just try to discover whatever facts are out there. Ultimately, you went from the 3,000-ish block to the 1,500 block of Avenue Q. Walk me through that, please.
I remember pulling into the area and hearing the music. My windows were rolled up, and I had the police radio on. I could still hear the music. And as we were pulling up, it seemed that the music was coming from 1501, and I remember radioing that in. And I pulled farther east, and Lopez stayed farther west.
Okay. Neither one of you pulled in the driveway?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Just as I never pull in a driveway, I always park alongside the road.
Okay. Is that protocol? Is the protocol related to that?
I don't know if there's protocol. It's just what I've always done.
Okay. And I think it makes sense, but why do you do that?
Well, most accidents happen while you're backing. I don't like to back up as little as possible.
Fair enough. Easier to get out as well. Have you, since this incident, listened to any of the CD that was found that was allegedly playing in Greg Hill's stereo?
No, I have not.
Have you heard anybody talk about that CD? In other words, they listened to it and they told you what was on it.
I'm just going to object to the extent you're asking for attorney-client privilege communications.
Okay, fair. Yeah, nothing from your attorney. But other than your attorney, have you had any conversations about that CD since this incident?
Not that I recall, no.
What do you recall hearing?
Pretty foul language, really loud.
And foul language is kind of subjective. There's stuff that's played on the radio that to some people is foul. There's stuff that could never make the radio. There's stuff that's just, whether heavy metal hardcore or rap hardcore, it's a different level. Can you help me kind of in that subjective interpretation of, what you were hearing?
I heard the word fuck quite a lot.
Okay.
Bitch. The N-word quite a lot.
Okay.
And I didn't think that was appropriate.
Particularly across the street from a school.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand that. So continue to walk me through about, what you did.
We arrived on scene. I logged in with dispatch that we had arrived and told them the house number that the music was coming from. Deputy Lopez and I walked up the driveway where the music seemed to be coming out of the garage. And we banged a couple times on the garage. We didn't get a response, so the front door was to the east of the garage. I walked up the sidewalk to the front door while Deputy Lopez stayed at the garage. And the metal screen on the front door, I don't know if I remember, I didn't have a handle or something like that, so I pulled it open and I knocked. I didn't hear anything, and because the music was so loud, I took my asp out and I used the end of my asp to bang on the door so they could hear me. And then I heard the music get louder, and I looked, and it's because the garage door was opening.
And then what?
I saw Mr. Hill standing a couple of feet away from Deputy Lopez, and Lopez was in the driveway, still on the outside of the garage. Mr. Hill had his left hand on the garage door like this, looking at Mr. Lopez, and he had a gun in his right hand.
Did you see the gun in his right hand?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And then what?
I yelled gun, and I drew my gun. I kept yelling at him to drop the gun. The music was so loud, I was screaming at the top of my lungs, gun, drop the gun.
And then what?
At that time, I had my service weapon pulled. I was aimed at him. I yelled gun. I screamed gun one more time as loud as I could, drop the gun, and Mr. Hill kind of looked my way, and then the garage door started coming down as he was raising the gun.
Okay. So the left hand pulled the garage door down, and the right, the gun was raising as the garage door was going down?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then what?
I thought, the way the gun was coming up, I thought he was going to shoot Lopez through the garage. And if you miss Lopez, there's 50 kids behind us.
So what'd you do?
I fired my weapon.
How many times?
4.
Have you seen pictures of the garage door since?
Yes, sir.
There's some that are further towards the ground, and there's one that's like 5 to 6 feet up. Do you know the sequence of how they were fired?
Yes, sir.
How?
Just counting up from the bottom, the lowest one was the first, and then 2, 3, 4.
Why'd you fire like that?
I was always trained to track vertically up.
Okay. Were you shooting to kill?
I was shooting to eliminate a threat.
Once the garage door closed, what threat was there?
A garage door is just concealment, it's not cover. I mean, you can shoot through it.
What's the difference between concealment and cover?
Concealment just hides you from view, while cover provides protection.
Okay. Did Mr. Hill ever say anything that you heard?
If he did, I did not hear it over the music.
Okay. Did Deputy Lopez say anything that you heard?
Over the music and everything, I could not hear.
Okay. So, is it fair to say, I guess one can hear one's own voice. Did you hear anything else said from the time that garage opened to the time that garage closed other than what you said? Did you hear anybody else say anything?
No, I did not.
Okay. Help me understand through this sequence the laws. Well, before I get there, had you done any background investigation on Mr. Hill before you knocked on the door?
I don't understand.
That's probably because I think it assumes that you hadn't. Did you do any background investigation on the residents before you?
You mean like pull up a call history or anything?
Correct. Did you do anything to research 1501 Avenue Q before you knocked on the door?
No, I did not.
Did you do anything to research the residents of 1501 Avenue Q before you knocked on the door?
No.
Had you, to your knowledge, encountered Gregory Hill before January 14, 2014?
To my knowledge at that time, no, I did not.
Okay. Have you since learned that you had?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
After all this came to light, I apparently had arrested Mr. Hill in, I think it was 2004, during the hurricanes, in the aftermath when we had the curfew for a curfew violation.
Do you have independent recollection of that?
I mean, we arrested a couple of people during hurricane violations, so nothing about that arrest really stands out in my mind.
What do you recall what hurricane that was?
That was Francis and Jeannie, I think, was the year that we had the two hurricanes.
Yeah, that's right. Do you recall, or did you since learn what he was doing to cause him to be arrested? What was the probable cause for the arrest?
During that time? He was out past the curfew. Like I said, I don't really recall the arrest. It was a curfew violation.
Okay. Do you recall the terms of the curfew?
I would like to say, I believe that the curfew violation was in effect that no one was to be on the street after 8 o'clock. It was 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night.
And he was, as you recall, he was out after that?
Yes, sir. And I usually gave people like a half-hour leeway to make it home and stuff like that. So without seeing the arrest, I couldn't tell you exactly what time or anything.
That's fine. Do you recall whether he was doing anything, nefarious or criminal-like?
Like I said, I really don't recall the arrest.
Okay. Did you recognize Mr. Hill before you shot him?
No.
That arrest would have been while you were at Fort Pierce Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Again, I don't want to know about any conversations with your attorney, but how did you learn? How was that association made?
I believe I had, during the interviews the next day, the detectives asked me if I recalled having any, and I said no, and they said, well, you had arrested him in 2004, and I said, well, for a curfew violation. I said, well, I don't really remember it.
You said you arrested 2 people for curfew violations?
I arrested more than 2 during that time. I think it was like a week long or almost a month long of the curfew.
Okay. We started this off where you described Fort Pierce as kind of how did you describe it? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
It's kind of a low-income, high kind of crime area.
Okay. And you've spent most of your law enforcement career working this low-income, high-crime area. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Do you predominantly arrest minorities?
I arrest whoever violates the law.
I understand. The population that you deal with, the people that you're investigating in Fort Pierce, during your time with Fort Pierce and St. Lucie County as a whole, I mean, can you estimate what percentage of the people that you're investigating or arresting are a minority?
No, I really couldn't. I don't really look at that.
Okay. From an outsider standpoint, do you know, like Jacksonville has 27% African American population, and I think 6 or 7% Hispanic, just purely objectively. Do you know what Fort Pierce is?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do you know what St. Lucie County is?
No, I do not.
During your time with Fort Pierce, did any suspect or arrestee make any claims that you used excessive force or were racially biased? Strike that. Any time during your Fort Pierce police history, did anybody make any accusations against you that you used racially bias in your police work?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Did you have any excessive force complaints lobbied against you during your time at Fort Pierce Police?
None that stand out to my mind. Again, without looking at the record, I couldn't really tell you.
Okay. Did you review your personnel file before today?
No.
Do you recall, or has your recollection since been refreshed? Meaning, did you since look at a report and kind of refresh your memory from 2004 about any of the facts of the encounter where Mr. Hill was arrested for a curfew violation by you?
No, I never looked up the arrest, no.
Okay. Why not?
I didn't see a need to.
Tough question. Do you admit that you shot and killed Gregory Hill?
I shot and eliminated a threat.
Did that shooting result in the death of Gregory Hill?
Yes, it did, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you for that. Have you ever had to give a deposition in a civil case? Do you know what a civil case is?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever had to give a deposition in a civil case?
As far as being in law enforcement,
Yes.
no, I don't believe I have.
Okay. Have you been under an administrative investigation where statements were taken or depositions held other than this one?
Check to the form.
I could probably ask that question better.
And I'm just objecting for the use of the word deposition.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you ever has any of your police work ever been investigated by the FDLE that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of? Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Was this ever investigated by the FDLE that you're aware of?
I have no clue.
Okay. You know what the FDLE is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has any of your police work in any department led to, other than this, led to an indefinite suspension?
No.
Check to the form.
Okay. What did you call the period from the time? Did you go to work the next day after this?
No, I was out for, I believe, 9 days.
And what do you call that? What was that called?
I thought you meant other than this.
That's fine. No. And I did mean other than this. But what's that called? I want to make sure I'm using
That's
your words.
an administrative leave, paid
Okay.
administrative leave.
Paid administrative leave. Had you ever been on paid administrative leave before this?
Not to my recollection, no.
Okay. And you believe your paid administrative leave related to Greg Hill was 9 days?
I believe it was 9 or 10 days.
Okay. Was Officer Lopez on the same type? Was he placed on paid administrative leave?
Yes.
Do you know if it was a shorter or longer or the same duration?
I believe it was the same duration because we both went to the psychologist on the same day to get returned.
Okay. You ask questions as an attorney, oftentimes without judgment, but the deponent always feels like there's judgment in that. But I ask this in all of these cases. Have you ever been a member of any type of white supremacy group, including the
No.
Unlimited? I know. The Ku
No, I
Klux
have
Klan.
not.
Okay.
No.
Has any of your close family been?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that's good. Have you ever been arrested for anything?
No.
Okay. Mic drop. Okay, so you've eliminated the threat. Do you know that you've eliminated the threat?
No, I did not.
Okay. So to you, is it fair that you shot 4 times into the door? You don't know what the result of that is, and the investigation continues. Is that a fair summary of where we are with the narrative?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What happened next?
I don't remember if it was myself or Deputy Lopez got on the radio that was alerted that shots were fired, and I did not know if I had hit my target, and I didn't want an armed suspect coming around the back and coming out the ambushes, so I left Deputy Lopez in the front of the house as he was retreating back to the cars, and I ran onto, I think it's 15th Street, to cover the back of the house to make sure nobody came out to get behind us. And I called out my position, and I remember saying that I didn't have any cover and that I needed somebody to come over there.
Okay. At any point before shots were fired, did you walk the perimeter of the house?
Other than to the front door, no.
Okay. There's, and I don't know what a home construction person would call it, but this was kind of a cinder block garage. Is that fair? Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And sometimes cinder block has patterns carved out where there's free space in between the aspects of the cinder block. It almost looks like a fan.
Yes, sir.
And this house had that.
Yes. I do remember that.
Yeah, on the side, I guess that'd be the east side.
The west side.
West side. Do you know if anybody ever attempted to look?
No. No. That's horrible offer safety if you have an armed suspect that'll sticking your head in there trying
Certainly.
to look.
Or use mirrors to look?
What SWAT did after that, but as far as Deputy Lopez and I are there, I would never stick my face in a window like that.
Certainly. You just... Okay. It's more like a butterfly than a fan. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir. I remember those.
Do you, so at any point did yourself, and I know the answer, but now that I'm showing you the picture, did yourself or any officer that you saw attempt to look, even from a different escalated location, attempt to look through that to see if Mr. Hill was in there?
No.
Okay. let's, before we go to kind of the SWAT call out and all of that response, let me kind of take this frame by frame. At the time you knocked on the door of 1501 Avenue Q, what were you investigating?
Vulgar music.
Okay. And what violation of Florida Municipal Code was that?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay, could
I'd
you
have
tell?
to, honestly, when you have a noise complaint, I usually have to look at the county ordinances on the computer.
Okay. And what were you intending to do about it?
Ask him to turn down the music.
Okay. Not answering the door, was that any sort of crime or violation?
No, sir.
Okay. At what point during the garage door opening, if any, did you see a crime or attempted crime committed by Mr. Hill?
Well, when he opened the door and he had a gun in his hand and began to raise that gun in the direction of a deputy, I took that as an immediate threat.
Okay. Was the possession, again, based upon the knowledge at the time, was the possession of a firearm in somebody's garage a crime?
Without knowing the specifics of who he was, no. Which is why we told him to drop the gun so we could figure all that out.
I understand. Was a little bit different question. Was the garage door opening and you seeing, all right, we established it wasn't a crime until it pointed at something. Was the possession of a firearm by Mr. Hill in his garage a threat to you?
Check to the form, go ahead.
I took it as a threat. I mean, when you see that you have a uniformed deputy in front of you and you still have a gun in your hand and then you decide to raise it, a normal person, when they see a deputy, I've gone to houses before where people have answered the door thinking it was someone else, and when they've seen it a deputy, they immediately put the gun down and everything's fine.
Certainly. Have you come to find out how intoxicated Mr. Hill was?
I don't know.
Okay. Was it 0.3? Do you remember 0.38? Yeah, that was hard blood. But it helped me understand this. Again, there were two of you there, and I can show you pictures of the garage or whatever we need to do to get through this. But was it an automatic or a manual garage door opener?
The way that it came open, I couldn't tell you for sure, but I assumed by the way it opened, how fast it opened, and with him keeping his hand on it, looked like he was holding it up. I assumed it was manual.
Okay. Did you ever, to this day, attempt to lift that garage door?
No, sir.
To this day, have you, other than that time where Mr. Hill lifted it, have you seen that garage door lifted?
No, sir. I stay away from that house.
I assume so. But later at the scene, on subsequent, you didn't do any subsequent investigation of this, I assume?
No, sir.
How long after you fired shots did you leave the scene?
Without looking at the CAD, which is what dispatch logs, I don't remember leaving out of there until 9 o'clock or after 9 o'clock.
Okay. So, going back, do you know how tall that garage door is from the point where the top of the garage door meets the foundation of the house or the part of the house?
I have no idea.
Structure? Do you know how tall Mr. Hill is?
No.
When Mr. Hill opened the garage door, do you recall whether he was bending, stooping, or crouching?
He was standing upright. Like I said, his hand was on the door, and he was kind of had his head down looking at Deputy Lopez.
Okay. So at the highest point, and what I'm trying to understand, that he could, I kind of want to see where the highest point of the garage door was in relation to the highest point, basically of what you saw with Mr. Hill. Did the garage door go all the way up at any point? Meaning you no longer saw the garage door?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And I'm asking about minute details of a, pretty quick event. I understand that. Do you know where the garage door reached its apex, meaning where it raised and then lowered? Do you know at what point off the ground it was when it was at its highest point before the shooting?
It was high enough that I could see in the whole garage.
Okay.
I could see all of him.
All of him, even the tip top of his hair?
Yeah, like I said, though, he was standing upright, but he was kind of like looking down at Deputy Lopez.
Okay. How long were his eyes exposed? Meaning, what quantity of time could you actually see Mr. Hill's eyes?
I don't know. I wasn't in front of him.
Did you ever see Mr. Hill's eyes?
Only when he glanced over at me for a second and then before he closed the door.
Okay. Is that what we're talking about? Basically at 1 second of time from the time that he put it up and put it down, and he was.
I couldn't give you a time frame, but it was long enough for me to yell 3 or 4 times at him.
Do you know if he could hear you over the music?
I'm assuming he did, but I can't tell you for sure.
Okay. I mean, I would assume, and since. Well, let's not assume. The speakers were in the garage.
Yes, sir.
The garage is made of concrete, largely. And so, would you agree with me that the stereo would be louder in the garage than outside?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And the speakers would have been to the, I'm going to do it again, east of his ear. The speakers would have been the east of him.
I'm guessing so. I don't know.
Do you know how long Mr. Hill's face was exposed by that garage door from the time that it went up to the time it went down over it?
Again, I couldn't tell you.
Less than a second?
It was long enough for me to yell at him 3 or 4 times.
Okay. When you yelled 3 or 4 times, was his, I know you could see his body, I know you could see parts of him, but for all of your gun, drop the gun comments, do you know if his face was above or below the door or just his body?
His face was below the door.
Okay. For all of that?
For me yelling at him, yes, his face was below the door. I could see his face.
Okay. And where would you have been to him?
I was kind of off at a 45-degree angle to it would be the northeast, kind of.
And where was Deputy Lopez?
Directly in front of him.
where was Greg Hill at all times that it, well, let me go back. Did Mr. Hill's gun raise, at what point did Mr. Hill's gun raise?
From what I recall, I yelled to him several times to drop the gun. I'm assuming he heard me on the last time because that's when he looked over at me. And when he did that, that's when he started looking back towards Lopez, and he did like a simultaneous bringing the gun up as he was bringing the garage door down.
Okay. Okay. So it's your testimony, because we're dealing with the written record as well as the video, but that left hand on the garage door was coming down as the right hand was coming up.
Yes, sir.
At some point they would have crossed. Do you know where kind of the bottom threshold of the door, at what point the gun was raised when the garage door kind of covered or concealed the gun?
The garage door came down pretty quick. It was coming down quick. I lost sight of the gun. It was coming up around his hip area, I believe, is where I last saw it. And, yeah.
Okay. And what do you mean by you last saw it as it was coming up around the hip area?
Because the door was closing, and by the time he was still bringing it up, like, it was a slam on the garage door. That's why I assumed it was manual.
Okay.
Because the door was coming down quick, and the gun was coming up, and the door blocked my view of the gun as it was still coming up.
Okay.
Around his hip area.
So when the gun would have reached parallel with the ground, you wouldn't have seen that, because you never saw the gun perfectly parallel to the ground. Does that make sense?
Yes or no, I did not.
Okay. Did you ever see, therefore, the gun aimed at either officer, either you or Officer Lopez?
I did not see it specifically aimed at anybody.
Okay. Do you know if the gun was loaded?
I have no idea.
Do you know who the owner of the gun was?
No.
Did you ever make a determination of either of those facts?
I was told eventually that the gun was not loaded.
Okay.
And I was also told that the gun was stolen out of Port St. Lucie.
Okay. The pictures I've seen, have you seen the photos of Mr. Hill, the deceased Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that there's a gun in his back pocket?
Yes.
Was there any other gun that you're aware of that you've seen?
No, sir.
Okay. Was the gun in the back pocket, and you know, I kind of want both certainty and candor here. Do you recognize the gun in the back pocket as the gun that he had in his hand, or do you know?
It is the gun that was in his hand.
Okay. Now, the gun that's in his pocket, what part is extruded? What part of the gun is extruding from his pocket?
From the pictures, I believe it was the bottom butt of the gun and the back end.
The part that touches the...
Yes, the
palm
back
of the
strap and the, yeah.
Which is part of the gun you would have never seen.
Right.
But yet you can affirmatively identify that gun.
You've asked me if I saw the pictures after it was removed. Yes, it was the gun that was in his hand after it was removed, but just seeing it in his pocket, no, I couldn't tell you.
Okay, so now you're and I'm not trying to trick you. You also saw pictures of the full gun.
Yes.
And that's what you're identifying off of, not the pictures.
Not the picture of it just in his pocket, no, sir.
Okay. What other photos have you seen?
Photos of the house, the garage, Mr. Hill, the firearm.
Who turned off, or how did the stereo come to be turned off?
I have no answer for that. I don't know.
In a press conference, Sheriff Mascara, is that your boss?
That's the boss, yes.
Yeah. He's the ultimate supervisor, but you have lower supervisors.
Yes, sir.
He said something to the effect of, I think the deputies cut off the music, and then he says, well, who turned it off? I think he wasn't sure, or he misspoke. Did you turn off the music?
Check the form, go ahead.
No.
Did you see Deputy Lopez turn off the music?
No, sir.
Okay, neither one of you went back in that garage.
No, sir.
Okay.
Check to the form.
When you got there the entire time until Mr. Hill opened it, that garage door was closed, right?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware if when that complaint came in, the garage door was open or closed?
I have no idea.
When did you, and I'm not trying to impute all of the knowledge of St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office to you, but did you become aware or involved that there might have been a child in the building? Did you have personal knowledge of that at any point?
Several hours after they had moved this from in front of the house, somebody was saying, I remember being near the command, waiting after getting the statement, getting pictures taken, that somebody had said that a family member had called and they were concerned there was a child in the house. So they asked me, and I said, no, I did not see a child at the time.
Okay. And we'll come back. We're gonna go back through kind of like we did, probably more briefly, the SWAT call out in a minute. What time is it? 13. Does anybody need a break?
No, I'm
We've been
good.
going an hour.
I'm good.
Court Porter? Okay.
Thank you.
Sometimes I've been known to make court reporters mad with smoky fingers, so just let me know. And at some point there was a camera, a robotic camera deployed. Were you involved with any aspect of that?
No, sir.
Did you go back to that scene after you left it on January 14, 2014? Have you been on that property for any reason?
The following day, I did a walkthrough with the detectives.
To show them what happened?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who was there with you for the walkthrough?
I believe Detective LeBeau was there. I couldn't really tell you anybody else.
What is his role with the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office? I'm sorry, St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office.
At the time, he was a detective.
What is he now?
He's a sergeant.
Who was your supervisor at the time?
My immediate supervisor at the time was Sergeant Mark Colangelo.
Who is it now?
Now my sergeant is Suzanne Woodward.
Did Sergeant Colangelo come to the scene?
I'm sure he did. I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Did you make any call-outs or seek any permissions from Sergeant Colangelo before firing your gun?
No.
Okay. Who was, other than you and Deputy Lopez, who was the next officer on the scene?
Next on scene, as far as I knew, was Detective Paul Pearson and I believe his Detective Blatchford was with him because I was standing, like I said, in the middle of 15th Street, and I called for somebody to bring a car over there, and when they showed up, Ed Lopez was still in the front of the house by himself, so when they showed up and they could cover the back of the house, I went to the front of the house with Mr. Lopez.
At that point, you know, obviously it was you and Deputy Lopez who had the first hand account of what happened. How was the incident? I mean, how did you report it to fellow officers? What would have been the signal, I guess, at the point the garage door closed and you fired shots? What did that investigation turn into? Do those questions make sense? That's kind of what. Let me restate all of that. Once the garage door closed and shots were fired, what did you report to fellow officers or dispatch?
That shots were fired and had a possible barricaded armed suspect.
Okay. Can one be barricaded in their own home? What does barricaded mean?
Means basically you've locked yourself in somewhere and you're not coming out.
He was doing that before you fired shots, ostensibly. He didn't hear you, or he wasn't coming out. I guess my question is, was there anything any more legal about him not coming to the door before shots were fired or after shots were fired?
Object to the form. Go ahead.
Well, as far as I know, after the shots were fired, he had committed a crime, and so then it was a criminal act.
What crime had he committed?
As far as I was concerned, he committed aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer.
Even though the gun was never pointed at a law enforcement officer?
It was an immediate threat. It was coming in his vicinity. From my perspective, from what I saw an imminent threat to Deputy Lopez's life.
When did the music stop?
I don't know. It played for a while.
Do you recall Officer Lopez making any... Did you see what Officer Lopez was doing as the garage door went up and down?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Then that's fair. Did Officer Lopez draw his revolver?
I have no
When I said
idea.
revolver, his service weapon.
I have no idea.
Did you hear... I think I asked this. Did you hear at any point any exclamations towards Mr. Hill by Deputy Lopez?
I don't recall.
Who was closer to you, Deputy Lopez or Gregory Hill?
It's about the same distance from them both.
Have you gone by any other surnames? Have you had any other last names?
No.
Okay. Believe it or not, I've had a couple. You're wearing glasses today. What prescription are you?
I'm nearsighted.
Okay.
I wear contacts at work.
Okay. Do you know what your vision is?
Not off the top of my head.
Where do you, who follows your vision care? Who do you see?
I don't see why my eye doctor has to do anything. I don't like giving out my doctors or medical unless it's...
Do you agree that your vision's relevant to this incident? What you saw, what you didn't see, what you could see, what you couldn't see?
Yeah, but I mean, I wear my contacts and wear my glasses, and I pass my vision tests every year.
Okay. You were wearing You were wearing contacts at the time of this incident.
Yes, sir.
Do you know when you would have last gone to a vision doctor before January 14, 2014?
I would have to get with my doctor to get my records.
Okay. Were you on the scene the next day when somebody had a metal detector? Do you recall that?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Did you ever see anybody on scene with one of those kind of metal detectors you take to the beach?
I couldn't tell you, sir. I was pretty busy.
Okay. At the time that you fired your shots, did you have any information that there was anybody in that house at all? Did you have any idea about how many people, if any, were in that house,
No,
other than seeing Greg Hill?
that was all I saw.
Okay. I asked if you had ever shot anyone in the, I said overall, but let me limit it to the line of duty. And you said you'd never shot anyone. Have you ever shot at anyone in the line of duty, other than Mr. Hill?
No.
Let's kind of go to the SWAT call out portion. So there was some degree of a report that an armed person was barricaded in their home. Fair?
Yes, he was barricaded.
Okay. Did you request any particular assistance related to that?
Calling out SWAT and all that is above my pay grade.
Certainly. Do you know who made those decisions?
I could not tell you.
Okay. Do you know if it was your sergeant that made any decisions related to that?
Again, I could not tell you.
When did you find out that, for lack of a better way to put it, SWAT was coming?
I didn't know they were coming until they showed up.
Okay. What is SWAT?
There's a special weapons and tactics team.
Have you ever been a member of SWAT?
No, I have not.
Have you ever sought to be a member of SWAT?
No.
Okay. Who responded to this scene?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. How many officers responded to this scene
I have
on
no idea.
January 14, 2014?
I have no idea.
Were you involved with the decision to fire tear gas into this residence?
No, I was not.
I guess then you didn't fire tear gas into this residence.
No, sir.
That's a SWAT thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did anybody from SWAT speak to you about what you saw before they reacted?
No, sir. Not that I was aware of.
What statements had you given any fellow officer other than what we just talked about what was going on at Avenue Q?
I don't remember how long Deputy Lopez and I were in front of the house. It was when SWAT responded and they finally got there. They pulled the armored vehicle up, allowed us to walk behind it as cover, and I gave a statement to Detective Briglia and Detective LeBeau.
Okay. Are they with SWAT?
No.
Are they with?
They're with the Detective Bureau, CID.
It's like an internal affairs kind of.
No, it was. They're not internal affairs; they're just regular detectives.
Okay. Did ultimately you give a statement with some form of internal affairs?
I can't remember what day it was, but I did give another statement that was recorded and all.
Okay. Do you know who that was to?
I couldn't tell you.
And some departments call them integrity, internal affairs. I've heard everything. Do you know what St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office refers to that unit?
Internal affairs.
Okay. Do you know what were you informed at any point that evening of why tear gas was ejected into the residence?
I'm not on SWAT. I don't know why they would. I have no idea.
Was there anything that you had firsthand knowledge of from being there that would have warranted tear gas, multiple canisters of tear gas being ejected into the residence?
I have no control or anything to do with the tear gas.
Okay. Do you know why the tank was called out? Or the armored vehicle?
I have no. I could not tell you the beginnings of the workings of SWAT. I've never been a member, and I don't want to be a member, and their secret society is theirs.
Okay. Why do you call it a secret society?
Because they train together and they have their own tactics and their own stuff they do, so and I'm not trying to learn it.
I understand. And I am trying to learn it. I kind of want to understand why, how this evolved from a noise complaint to a helicopter, an armored vehicle, tear gas, I think snipers. Did you see snipers at some point?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. How it escalated to that point. Do you have any knowledge about that?
Check to the form. Go ahead.
My belief is that when he brought a handgun to the front door, refused to comply and drop it, and began to raise it at a deputy, that changed the entire situation from loud music to an armed suspect who was threatening a police officer.
Okay. Do you have any information that Mr. Hill lived past 3 to 4 minutes after he was shot?
I have no idea.
Okay. Have you seen or heard of any evidence to that effect that Mr. Hill lived, that the bullets you fired didn't kill him?
I have no idea.
Okay. Other than the 4 shots you fired, did you see or hear anybody else fire any rounds whatsoever on that night?
To be honest with you, after I fired my first shot, I didn't hear anything.
Okay. Did you see or hear anybody else fire on that premises at any point during that night other than the tear gas?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Did you see the tear gas get fired in?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you interview any witnesses at the scene?
No.
Did Deputy Lopez interview any witnesses at the scene?
No, sir.
So to the extent,
That I'm aware of, no. As far as after it happened and we gave statements, we basically sat by a patrol car away from everybody.
okay. What is your understanding of a suspect's constitutional rights, if any?
Check to the form.
As far as what?
When I say the term constitutional rights related to a suspect, what comes to mind?
I don't. I try to uphold the Constitution with everybody. I'm a big advocate of Second Amendment. I'm a big advocate of First Amendment. I try to never violate anybody's Fourth Amendment. I think the Constitution is very important.
What is the Fourth Amendment?
Search and seizure.
What does that mean, search and seizure?
Excuse me?
You said, I said, what's the Fourth Amendment? You said search and seizure. I said, what does that mean?
Search and seizure, the Fourth Amendment guarantees you the right to be secure in your property and your comings and goings.
Okay. Do you feel you violated Mr. Hill's Fourth Amendment rights on January 14, 2014?
No, sir.
Why not?
He committed a crime.
And what crime is that?
Aggravated assault.
How?
As I said before, I've been to calls where homeowners come to the door with a gun, and once they've seen me and I've told them to drop it, they put the gun down, they apologize, and we talk. I don't take their gun away. Like I said, I'm a big advocate of the Second Amendment. When I pull people over and they have a concealed permit, they don't have a gun on them, I ask them why they don't have it. But when you fail to comply and you see that you're confronted with uniformed officers, and instead of acting as a responsible citizen and placing that gun on the ground and speaking with the deputies and just talking it through, when you begin to raise it up and close a door and begin to point it at those deputies, that you don't have a constitutional right to do that.
Okay. And what I'm trying to understand is, do you have any evidence that Mr. Hill heard you? You don't know what he heard.
I don't know what he heard. I couldn't testify to that.
Okay. And you've testified that you don't even know if Deputy Lopez, who was in equal distance away, said anything because the music was so loud.
I can't testify as to what Deputy Lopez did. I'm assuming he would have, but like I said, you will have to ask him.
Okay. If he testified he yelled gun and you didn't hear it, is that just because the music was so loud?
Check to the form. Go ahead.
It could be the music, and actually, sir, it was very stressful.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but it is very stressful.
I understand. And I appreciate the line of work you do. You do put yourself out there for the protection of us. And my job is to find out the details and determine, or let a jury determine, whether there was a breach of rights based upon this particular set of facts. And so I need to know those facts in as much detail as possible. And I think what we have is extremely loud music playing during the entire duration of this incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
That music would have gotten louder when that door opened to the exterior, to people outside, correct?
Yes, sir.
And a gentleman was entirely within his home, possessing a firearm at all times during this.
Okay.
Is that true?
Yes, he did have a firearm the entire time.
And he was in his home entirely for the entire duration of this incident?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He was shot and killed in his home, although you claim justifiable use of force.
It's not a claim, it's the truth.
Certainly, I understand that. And I don't mean that claim as in allegation or something false. That's your defense, right?
It's
Okay.
facts.
Certainly. And that gun was never pointed, that gun was never raised to be parallel with the ground. It was never fully raised.
That I saw.
Object to the form, yes.
Okay. The gun was never pointed at any officer or human being.
Object to the form, go ahead.
I did not see it directly pointed.
Okay. Do you know, at its ultimate point where you lost contact because of the garage door, at what degree it was pointed, or what, kind of level it was aimed, like at the knees or lower? Do you have any idea?
The muzzle would have been aiming towards Deputy Lopez's thigh area.
Okay. But I think you indicated it wasn't directly aimed at Lopez.
It wasn't center mass, no, sir.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Did you undergo a drug test after this?
I don't recall.
Okay. Were you under the influence of any alcohol or drug at the time of this incident?
No, sir.
Do you recall what you had done before coming on shift at 3 p.m. on January 14, 2014?
If I had followed my normal routine, I probably would have slept till like 11 or 12, gotten up, made myself something to eat, and then come into work.
Okay. Do you work out before shift?
No, I do not. I work out afterwards.
Okay. Do you take any caffeines, not just like Coke, but a caffeine supplement or any stimulant before going on shift?
No.
Did you that day? Let me take a little break, and we should be able to wrap up fairly soon after I come back on.
Off the record, 10:38. Back on the record, 10:52.
There's a robot depicted in photos that apparently cut the hole in the door. Do you recall that? Do you know if you were there for that?
I was on scene for that, but I did not witness it. I did not have anything to do with that. I was actually, at that point, still over by a patrol car being kept away from everything.
Certainly. Have you ever had any involvement with that robot at other scenes,
Before that, no, sir.
before or after?
After that, I believe they've used it a couple times.
Do you know if that robot does some form of taking pictures or video? Do you know?
I have no idea. As far as all I know about that robot is it is part of, I think the bomb unit actually runs that, and I have no idea what it's used for or what it's capable of.
Okay. I didn't know there was a dog in there today. Somehow I missed that. Did you ever see, other than him opening the door and closing the door, did you ever see Mr. Hill at any point? Well, strike that. Other than your time with him in 2004, related to the curfew incident, and him raising and closing the door in 2014, to your knowledge, have you ever seen Mr. Hill?
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
Again, some of those questions that I got to ask. Were you investigating Mr. Hill before 2014, between 2004 and 2014 for anything?
Not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of whether you or another officer was conducting any investigation of him or his family?
I can't answer for other officers, but I know I wasn't.
It's just a black and white Google photo of the residence. Can you hold that up to me and show me where you were when you fired?
In this grassy area here, kind of towards the corner.
Okay, and where was Officer Lopez or Deputy Lopez?
He would have been where this car is and towards the front of the garage.
Okay.
And just for the record, that picture, to clarify, that wasn't taken on the day of the subject incident, right?
No.
No.
Okay.
I think that's a Google photo. Thank you. Sorry, I was biting this lozenge. I'm going to present a document to you. I have presented a document to you. What is that? If you're aware.
This appears to be the transcript from the 911 tape or digital, whatever they have now.
Okay. The 911 tape or a dispatch log?
It would be dispatch. Sorry.
Okay.
The dispatch tape.
Can you, to some extent, translate this into English for us? You know, meaning where there were numbers, explain what those numbers are, and just kind of run through the first 10 or so entries of that.
Well, she calls my number. And she says SO 280 1065. That means copy a call. And I told her I would be Lima from my call with Paul Pearson, which means I was back in service.
Okay. What number are you?
280.
Okay.
1400 Avenue Q, signal 22, which is a disturbance call. Across the street from the school on Avenue Q, there's a brown house. Subjects have the garage opener playing obscene music very loud. No 1025, which means the caller does not want you to make contact with them. The caller.
Okay. The person who made the complaint.
And then I said I was 51, which means I was en route.
Okay.
And she says, she repeats 51 to acknowledge. 205, which is Justin Jackson, I believe, said he was going to be heading that way from Orange, and I don't know, it doesn't say. So he acknowledges that, and then 217, which is Deputy Lopez, says that he's right with me and that she can 66 the other unit, which means cancel it.
Okay. Keep going, please.
So Justin Jackson says 26, which means he understands, and he says 10-8, he's back in service. And then I call out that we're both going 97, which is on scene. And then I call out it's going to be 1501 Avenue Q. And she says 10-4. And then the next thing is shots fired, and she says that the main is going to be 1034, which is limited traffic.
What does that mean?
That means no calling out traffic stops, and I'm checking out with this, or I'm heading there. That's when they reserve a channel, so if something serious is going on, that they only want the limited traffic of that event on that channel, so nobody gets hurt.
Okay. Let me see. What number were you?
280.
Okay. So it was Officer Deputy Lopez that said shots fired first?
Obviously,
Reported
then,
it.
yes, sir.
Were you involved? It looks like 280. Can you advise the school they need to get everybody inside? Did you do anything else other than,
I just told them I believe they need to get the kids inside just in case they shouldn't be outside.
Okay.
As far as the lockdown goes, I was not involved in the lockdown.
Who was 417?
I don't know.
Who was 217?
217 is Deputy Lopez.
That's right. Sorry.
What does it say about 417? That would probably be, from the context, I would think that would be Deputy Pearson pulling on the 15th Street.
Okay. Is there any significance to the numbers?
100 numbers are supervisors. 200 and 300 numbers are just regular deputies, and 400 numbers are detectives.
Very good. Moving to 152814, where you described the gun. Tell us about that. What was your transmission?
Just signal 14, which means information. It was that's supposed to be little. I don't know why they misspelled it. Handgun, and I said maybe like a Kel-Tec model.
How'd you know that? Or what led you to deduce that?
When I saw the gun the couple nights previously, each night I had been looking at guns for another, as a backup or an off-duty, and I was looking at some of the Kel-Tecs, and I just remember looking at them thinking I didn't like them. I didn't like the look of them, so they stuck in my head.
So within 24 to 48 hours before this, you had been shopping Kel-Tecs?
Yes.
And that's how you recognized it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you purchase one?
No, I did not.
Would that have been for personal use?
It would have been for personal use,
Okay.
yes.
Can you use anything other than a service-issued firearm in conjunction with work?
You are allowed to use, but your primary one they assign you is your primary, but you are allowed to carry a backup that meets their requirements.
Okay. What are the requirements?
It has to be of a certain caliber, and you still have to qualify with it, and it has to be a certain action on the gun.
At this time, what was your January 14, 2014? What was your service weapon?
The same service weapon it is now, different gun, of course, but the Glock 45.
Okay. Moving down to 152906, it looks like Officer Lopez disagrees with you on what the gun was or looked like. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Tell me about that. Just help me understand the kind of the dispatch report. Any policees in there?
Just information. He thought it looked more like a Glock 30 or 22, which is the model, or a 27, which is a small 40.
You know what it turned out to be?
I believe it was a Kel-Tec.
There's a point where it says take everybody over to capital T, capital A, capital C1. What does that mean?
TAC 1, that is an off channel that they would have just specifically used for this event, so they could have the main channel back so they could dispatch emergency calls for service.
Okay. Have you ever been on the TV show 10-8?
No, I have not.
Are you aware of it?
Yes, I am
What is your
aware of it.
understanding of it?
As far as from what I understand, what I've seen on, I don't know what it was on YouTube or a while ago, I haven't kept up with it, but as far as I know, it was like a version of Cops locally put on by the police department here.
Just for identification. Who is that gentleman, if you know?
That's Major Rothman.
What is his role with the St. Lucie? Good grief, St. John's is on my mind today. St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office.
Now he is the major over, I think it's administration.
You know what he was at the time?
At the time, I don't know if he was still the captain over the investigative CIC criminal investigations or not. I don't know.
You can't really see all of these three gentlemen, but to the extent you can identify them from left to right or right to left, just tell me which one you're using.
From left to right, it looks like Deputy Chief Wilson, Major Thompson, and Captain Scavuzzo.
Okay, who are they?
That's the deputy chief. He's the Major Thompson is over law enforcement, and Captain Scavuzzo at the time was over road patrol.
Did you see Sheriff Mascara at the scene on January 14, 2014?
Yes, I did.
Did you have any conversations with him that evening?
Other than the fact that he just asked that I was okay if I need anything, and I said no, and that was it.
Okay. Do you know what his role was on scene on that evening?
I do not know.
Did you see him or hear him giving orders or directives?
I did not.
Is that you?
Yes, sir.
On the night Do you know if that's the day in question or?
Yes, I was.
Okay. You right hand or left hand dominant?
Right hand.
When you fired your service firearm, did you do it with one hand or two hands?
Two-handed grip.
TC, you got some questions? We talked about this a little bit. Do you know why St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office responded to this incident and not Fort Pierce Police Department?
I couldn't tell you. Like I said, my assumption was because it came from the school area, and we cover the schools.
When did you first pull your firearm from your holster? At what point in the sequence of events?
When I saw the gun.
Okay, as the door was coming up.
I didn't see the door coming up. Because I was at the front door, when I had turned, the door was already open and he was standing there.
Okay. Do you know how long from the time you pulled your firearm out of your holster to the time you shot?
I couldn't tell you. It was not immediate.
Why not? Or what do you mean?
I was giving him orders to place the gun down. I just didn't pull my gun and shoot.
Okay. Do you know if you'd ever responded to any call of any type at 1501 Avenue Q before this?
None that sticks out in my mind. I'm sure over my course of my career in the city of Fort Pierce, I might have been there for one reason or another in the area, but nothing that I recall ever being there for.
Okay. Since this, do you recall going there or any neighboring houses?
No, sir.
So, no, okay, good. At what point did you feel threatened?
At the point he was not placing the firearm down and complying.
You didn't feel threatened when you saw the gun?
Not at first, no, sir.
Do your or Deputy Lopez's shoes indicate that you're with St. John's? I did it again. Do yours or Deputy Lopez's shoes indicate that you're with St. Lucie Sheriff's Office?
Mine do not know.
Do your pants?
My pants? Not that I'm aware of. They don't say anything.
Does your belt?
Belt does not know.
Does anything below your belt indicate you're an officer of the law?
Nothing specifically says St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, but it's a typical police issued uniform, gear, duty belt.
Okay. Is there, other than it's probably a matching color, on the uniform you were wearing January 14, 2014, what's the, going from bottom up, what's the first thing that shows that you're a member of law enforcement?
Badge.
Okay. Anything else?
We have shoulder patches.
Okay. Do you recall, or we know you didn't hear Deputy Lopez say it. Do you recall saying that you were a member of law enforcement, or just gun, put down the gun?
I'm sure at one point I said sheriff's office. I always announce who I am.
You have a specific recollection of what you said other than gun, put down the gun?
I believe I said something like sheriff's office, drop the gun.
Okay. Every one of the bullets you fired went through the garage door?
I assume so.
Did you only fire 4?
I only fired 4.
Who would be the best person to ask about, or who would have been in charge of SWAT that evening?
Whoever the SWAT commander is, I have no idea.
Okay. Was Officer Lopez closer to the threat, closer to Mr. Hill than you were?
Yes, sir.
And you don't know if he pulled his gun?
I could not testify to that, no.
And I know you said you usually do, but can you testify that you identified, that you yelled that you were a member of law enforcement or the sheriff's office before firing at Greg Hill?
Yeah, I can testify to that, because even when knocking on the doors, and I'm yelling sheriff's office, sheriff's office,
Okay.
sheriff's office, sheriff's office.
Certainly, when you were knocking, and I want to. That's 100% fair, and I appreciate that. Now, when the door's coming up and going down, do you have a specific recollection of identifying yourself as law enforcement at that point?
I can't recall. But like I said, that's my standard, is to identify myself and give a command.
Certainly. Yes. Do you guys carry any type of bullhorn or other voice amplification device in your cruisers?
No, I do not. In the, like a handheld, no, there is not. But in your patrol car, as part of your siren bar and light capability, is a PA.
Correct. You can sit in your car and speak on the microphone and it'll come through. I've
Yes.
had the unfortunate time of hearing that. Pull over. Okay. Did you use that amplification at all on January 14, 2014?
I did not, no.
Did anybody else that you
I
heard?
Do not remember.
Perfect. Did you have any, again, obvious question, did you have any warrants with you related to Mr. Hill or the occupants on January 14, 2014?
No, I did not.
Was he being investigated for any other criminal activity?
Not by me.
we've gone for about 2 hours. Is there anything you want to add to your statement? Anything that you feel that I've missed that I need to know?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
I have no questions, and he'll read.
Okay.
This deposition is concluded at 11:19.